All right, hey, thanks for joining us today for today's whiteboard on improving employee experience. My name is Matt Klassen. I am VP of Product Marketing here at Cherwell. And so this is going to be really interesting, I think, today because as IT professionals, I've been an IT professional for longer than I would like to admit, and we've always struggled, I think, with user experience. So we roll out IT, we roll out technology, but are we rolling it out in a way such that it's usable, the experience is good, and I think employee experience is becoming a more and more important topic for IT professionals. So let's talk about, or today in the whiteboard, we're going to talk about what is employee experience. We'll start there. We'll then take a look at the state of self-service because these two are increasingly being connected together. And then finally, we'll talk about some practical tips for you on how to create a much more engaging employee experience. So let's start. So let's start by defining the word experience. I think this is really important to kind of understand what does this word even mean. So first of all, there's different definitions out there. You can go with the dictionary definition, but one of the ones that I really like is this notion that experience is the sum total of events or interactions, right? So it's not a single interaction, it's not a single point in time, but there's a whole set of connected interactions that together, or events that together create an experience. So to kind of make that a little bit more tangible, I think it's very interesting to kind of think about what are some of the dimensions of experience. So one is interactions. So let me erase that because my writing isn't very good here. So the first thing is interactions. All right, so obviously that's kind of obvious from the definition, but it's a set of interactions. It's not a single point in time. So another word that's really important, or dimension, is that of feeling. So there's this notion that emotions have something to do with experience, our emotional connection to what's going on. And then the next one is interesting, is recognition. So when you think about experience or an experience, right, it could be a new experience or a familiar experience. In either case, if it's familiar, again, that gives us some emotion and that interaction. But if it's not familiar, what do? We connect it to, try to recognize what is this like? Is this like something else that I've done? And there are those connections that are made. Another one is expertise. So the notion that experience is tied to expertise, a set of best practices maybe. And then finally, this notion of intelligence. The giving of intelligence or building of intelligence through an experience. All right, so all of these kind of together make up this notion of experience. So now let's talk a little bit about what is the value of experience. So when we think about, what we do here at Cherwell, we tend to talk about it as IT service management or service management. And so I think it's interesting to then think about, okay, so a service is something we provide, what's the value of a service, but what's the difference between service and experience? So I think the easiest way to kind of think about this is if we draw a little graph here, and we say this vertical dimension or Y dimension is about value, and then I'm going to get on my knee here so I can actually draw down here, is this horizontal is types of coffee distribution. So they say you should talk about something near and dear to your heart. So here's my coffee. Enjoy my coffee. This is definitely not as good as the coffee that I usually like to drink, but it's cheaper. Anyway, so the very first thing here is you can deliver coffee as a good. So this would be, hey, I go to the store, I go to a retail store, I buy, for instance, maybe a Keurig K-Cup, right? So we have these Keurig pods, if you will. And how much would you pay for that? Well, maybe 50 cents, 30 cents, 50 cents. So we'll put that here. We'll put K-cup. So now, and I didn't have to grind it technically, but you could buy beans and grind it as well. That's buying coffee as a good. So it has a certain value attached. If we think about coffee as a service, maybe it's more like, hey, I go down to Dunkin' Donuts, I go to McDonald's, I go somewhere, where it's just a piping hot, fresh cup of Joe. They've grinded the beans, they've roasted it, or not roasted it, they ground the beans, they brewed the coffee, and they gave it to me in a cup, ready to go. That's maybe $2, in that range, right? But when we think about an experience, right, how much are people willing to pay for coffee as an experience? One of the best known brands worldwide, you guessed it, is Starbucks. And although that's not my favorite coffee by any means, I do frequent Starbucks globally because I know what kind of experience I'm going to get. For instance, right here on my home page of my phone, what do I have but my Starbucks app, right? So I can go and order Starbucks ahead of time, do a mobile order, I can pay with my app. The way in which the entire store is organized with free Wi-Fi, with different types of products and services, globally available consistently, consistent level of quality. The baristas are always trained very, very well. If they make a mistake, even if I make a mistake in ordering, they will remake my order for me, no charge. It is an entire experience, and guess what? They can charge a premium, double that of a standard cup of coffee as a service, because it is an experience. Okay, so there's a lot of value behind experience. So let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about employee experience, right? Because I said, hey, it's about employee experience. We've only talked about experience thus far. So here we have our employee, Bill, Sally, whatever name you'd like to give our employee. So we'll put that here, employee. Okay. So experience then is really from the point that they're onboarded to the point that that employee is offboarded, right? Hired to, I won't say fired. They're probably not fired. They probably moved on to a much better job, right? So, but they've left the company for another opportunity, and that is their entire experience. Okay. And the reason I draw it this way is because there's another word that people use, which is engagement, employee engagement. But a lot of times what we really mean by engagement is we pick a point in time and we measure their engagement level at some point in time on a particular interaction, okay? So employee experience doesn't have to be the entire life cycle. That's one way to think about it. That would be definitely an HR way to think about it. It could be a section of interactions across a certain time as well, right? That would also indicate employee experience versus engagement at a particular point in time, okay? So that's important to know, because now we're going to talk a little bit about why is this important again to you, employee experience, and there's a few reasons. First of all, well, CIO magazine says it's a CIO top 3 priority in 2019. There's a reason that it's a top 3 priority, and if your CIO says, hey, this is a top priority for the company, then it's probably important to you as an individual. 2, it's about daily work experiences. So employee experience is about daily work experiences. So if you think about a day in your life, just think about yourself, think about any of the employees. What is the very first thing they do, other than potentially getting a cup of coffee? They go and they what? They log into their laptop probably, right? So guess what? It's not just daily work experiences, really more than any other thing, I think. It's a daily IT work experience. Hence, it's important. And then finally, if that's not enough, Forrester basically says that the CIO must or should lead employee experience transformation, period, end of story. And it's really, again, go back to these other points, because IT it is extremely important in a daily work experience. Okay, so with that, let's move on. I'm going to check our box here. What is employee experience? And I'm going to erase this, and we're going to go to number 2, state of self-service. So give me a moment, and I will continue. So, but before I get started, I might as well start the intro. So, self-service and employee experience are closely related. And they're closely related because more and more companies are trying to improve employee experience by providing a better self-service experience, a more engaging self-service experience. So there's IT efficiencies to be gained, but theoretically there's big gains for employees as well because they can get their problem solved quicker. They have a seamless experience in terms of technology, not going down, etc. And so self-service is important. So how are we doing? How are we doing as IT? Well, let's find out. So, and there's a bunch of different sources that I use for this. So one is Gartner, but there's others as well that sort of corroborate the evidence. So there's 3, I'm going to kind of group ways in which employees can interact with IT when they have a problem, and plus or minus, okay, of employees want to do one of these 3 things. IT. They want to just go to Google. This is not the company knowledge base portal, etc. This is just Google. Or they want to go ask a coworker to solve their problem. Okay. So any given day, anytime there's a problem, about half of our employees would want to use one of these channels to go solve their problem. The next group would be email or live chat. So this is interesting, but you'll notice something here. What do we call this? A state of self-service? Which of these are really self-service? I guess you could say Google is sort of self-service or coworker is sort of self-service. The reality is we as IT didn't provide them those channels. We didn't provide them help. So it's not really our self-service. It's maybe their own. But that's probably not the best place, right, for them to go get help. And so what percentage, and again, this is roughly 20% plus or minus, and then at a less than 10%, we have chatbot, knowledge base, or portal. Okay, so those would be traditional self-service. So that means, how are we doing? Well, I'm going to give us a frowny face, right? We're not doing so well in terms of self-service. So state of self-service, right there. But why? Why? Why is that the case? Let's talk about that for a minute. So I think there's a bunch of reasons. Number 1, I call this do my work for me, right? We tend to just create a self-service portal maybe, but really what we're doing is we're just taking a complicated IT form and we're just giving it to the employee. Go fill this out, right? That's probably not going to work real well for a lot of reasons, but that tends to be what we do as IT professionals. Number 2 is similar maybe, and that is just build it. So if we're going to build a self-service portal or a portal, we just go build it and hey, they should come, right? This is cool, they should come and use this. We don't really put a lot of thinking behind how we roll it out, how we enable them to use it, how we train them, the entire sort of experience around that portal. And so, again, that's another failure point. Another one is, less than 20 clicks. And I'm making this up, and maybe this is a little bit extreme, but it seems like IT has this thing like, as long as it's less than 20 clicks to solve a problem or to submit a problem, we're good, right? But juxtapose that with Amazon, right? One-click ordering, right? This is what consumers expect and employees are bringing those consumer expectations to work. And then number 4, the final one, is this notion of we will build it for every employee. And that is sort of a false thinking that all employees are created equal. And we'll talk about that actually next when we get to the tips. So, one more cup of coffee. Or not cup, I don't drink the whole cup. A sip. Okay, so tip number 1. Tip number 1 is design experiences for specific personas. All right, so the first thing is design. This is an important word here. So the fact that you're actually thinking about and designing an experience versus just throwing a service out there, right? And then there for specific personas. This is really, really important. And if you don't know what a persona is, there's a lot of resources. Again, I've been in marketing now. Again, started out degree in computer science, developed software, worked in IT departments, then consulted in IT departments and implemented tools and did all kinds of interesting things for many, many years. And then I went into product marketing, still talking to customers, still always talking to IT professionals at conferences and our customers, etc. But I had to get an education when I went into marketing around the word persona, right? I mean, this is a very important word when you're in marketing especially, because we have to think about the different types of people that we interact with. Either the users of our software or the buyers of our software, right? And so this becomes an important concept. So for this example, I'm just going to create a very simple example. So we have our professor, we'll call her Mary. See, she has long hair. I know that's kind of a weird stereotype for women, but because it could be a man. But anyway, at the end of the day, here we have our professor. We then have a student, right? It's another persona. Again, and you can even break your personas way down much further than this, but let's just make a simple example. Student. This is at a higher education. And the student, we'll just indicate the student because the student's got kind of crazy hair, got a little smirk on their face. Oh, she doesn't have a mouth. All right, and then the third persona that we're going to give this is our administrator. We know it's an administrator because the administrator is wearing a tie. And so this is an admin person, or admin. Person at that university, okay, or higher education. And they don't have a face at all, so maybe I should give them one. All right, so now we have our 3 personas, okay? So if you think about self-service or their experience for these 3 personas, it's going to be very different. What you would design would be very different. So for instance, the professor who spends the majority of their time in the classroom teaching, okay, when they have an IT problem, do you think they're going to want to get out their laptop, mobile device, put in an IT ticket, and wait for a response that somebody's going to, right? No way, no way. They're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to say, I need support. They want a big red button saying something's wrong. Maybe you could actually, one of our customers, I think a couple of them actually, they're in universities, they've actually now played with using Echoes. So put an Amazon Echo in different classrooms, right? And say, Alexa, I need help with the projector. My projector's not working, right? And Alexa is tied back into their IT service management knowledge base, etc. And it can walk them through some steps on how to potentially solve it. But at the same time, there's probably notified an IT professional such that, you know, in a few minutes, maybe in 30 seconds, a minute, somebody kind of shows up at the classroom, right, to help that person get moving. Again, interesting, more innovative way. The student, on the other hand, right, our demographics would say, they're going to want to use a mobile device. They are not going to use it this way because they don't do that, right? I have kids that are in university. Good luck. They probably won't answer my call, although I've trained them. that they should answer my call because I am not of their generation. But if I send them a Snapchat, I'll probably get a quicker response. So students want to solve problems on their own mobile device, and they don't really want to talk on the phone. So, think about what that experience would be for this person, right, this persona. And then administrators are going to be much more like employees at many organizations where they come into an office, they have meetings, they have a desk with a computer, a laptop, and they're going to log in, and they're going to look like similar to a lot of other employees at other corporations. So although this is a more obvious example of how personas could work, right, and how you need to think about personas for help, helping your employees, giving them a better experience, I think it's a good example. So, all right, that was tip number 1. So let's go to tip number 2. Experience begins with a journey. So, this is sort of like not exactly the same as, hey, every journey begins with a single step. Nope. EX begins with a journey. What do I mean by that? Well, what I actually mean is a customer journey. In this case, it would be an employee. A user journey, a customer journey. And so, there, again, if you kind of Google some of these things, how do you define personas and so forth, you'll find lots of information. Now we're going to take a particular persona, right, and we're going to kind of break down an experience into, first of all, what you're going to do is you're going to map it out in a set of phases. So generally experiences have something called a set of phases to that overall experience. And then those phases are further broken down by a set of interactions. So I'm just going to draw them as dots here. And again, typically these map to a specific phase. And so I think to make this a little bit more real, let's think about, we'll think about something that has nothing to do with IT, because you can use these maps, if you will, these journey maps, anywhere, right? And there are a lot of different areas, right? Again, it may have to do with technology, but in this case, we'll use travel. So a travel example. So the first thing you might do is, before you book, you're going to research your travel, then you're going to book your travel, then maybe it's the air travel part, and then maybe it's, I don't know, the hotel, or travel to the hotel. And so at each point, there's a set of interactions, and so you would define what those interactions are. So for research, right, maybe the first thing is Google. So if I'm the organization that wants to satisfy this need, then I've got to be thinking about SEO, right? Search engine optimization. How are they going to find my website or my service or so forth, right? But maybe your particular travel agent is old school, right? And so they Google, they find you, but now they send an email. Okay? And so as we go through these interactions, right, another thing we want to do, right, if this is the phases, these are the interactions, is we want to capture sort of the emotions, okay, kind of the emotional footprint, emotions as they're going. So Google, pretty good, they found you pretty quickly, so maybe that's a little smiley face. Email, hey, that was easy, they emailed you, that's a smiley face, but now, guess what, they have to wait. How long are they going to have to wait to get a response, right, for that email? And if it's 48 hours, that is a frowny face, right? That's a bad emotional experience at this point, right? So we can do that for all these interactions, like at air travel. Well, maybe it's the lines at the airport, right, when they have to go check in. Maybe there's a way to fix that, but that's, again, maybe a poor experience. So now we're thinking, okay, as we look through here, where are the moments of truth? Moments of truth are those points at which we can change the entire experience. We can change the trajectory of that experience. And a lot of times moments of truth come where there's typical hiccups, right? Where these little frowny faces are, that's a clue. Maybe there's a moment of truth. And so I'll just put M-O-T here, moment of truth. And so we could then indicate, with our little light bulb here, that there's a moment of truth right here, and maybe there's a moment of truth right here, right? And so those are places we could focus on for improvement, okay? So again, you can do this very quickly, very easily. You can do research on this topic, these journey maps, customer journeys, a lot of times they're called. But just to give you an example, to kind of further hit this, kind of hammer this home, if you will. You all, if you're watching this, all two or one of you maybe, no, anyway, I don't know how many of you, but maybe there's hundreds of you, hopefully there is, but you all are on my journey that I've defined for you, right? So it's not mine, it's everybody here in our marketing group, but basically in marketing we have this thing, these phases, right? So if we take phases, the first one's called awareness. The next phase might be called evaluation. Okay? At the end of the day, we're a software company, and so we want to sell you software to help you with these things. But the first one's awareness, the second one is evaluation, the third one is maybe decision, right? So in this particular journey, guess what? You, watching this right now, are right there in awareness. You're in our awareness phase. We can't read that, it says awareness. I think I'm getting messier here. And so you're in our customer journey, so you're on that right now. So, all right, cool. So let's move on to tip number 3. So measure your way to better employee experience. Okay, so I mean it's a common adage. Everybody's heard the adage. I'll explain it in a second here, but which is you cannot improve what you do not measure. It is more or less true, whether you like it or not. It's sort of the way the world works. Organizations that are more mature tend to have better KPIs and metrics. They tend to measure things better, more precisely, and they measure what matters. Okay, so in this case, this is important because there's an old way and sort of a new way. And if we think about the old way of measuring, we would measure calls, for instance, right? But if we want people not to call, we really want them to help themselves or go to our portal or increasingly, right, do other things other than calling, which is expensive and actually probably in many instances not the most efficient even for the end user, especially as we have changing demographics, right? The old way is, hey, we're going to measure calls, we're going to measure first call resolution percentage, for instance. The new way is to broaden that and to actually just change our terminology. We'll just call them contacts. So in other words, if they come to our portal, that's a contact. They've had contact with the information we've given them. And we can measure a couple of things. First of all, we could measure the cost of the contact per contact, and we could measure time. Both of those are interesting and valuable. We could then, therefore, some combination there, we could also measure quality, right, of those contacts. And in fact, a really good way to think about quality, so we used to maybe measure MTTR, mean time to resolution, and although that's also important and still potentially valid, we want to change the way we think about that. So for instance, we might have successful, I'm going to use another term here, level 0 support, or unsuccessful, or we could call it failure rates versus success rates, but unsuccessful. Level 0 support, okay? So level 0, if level 1 is I'm interacting with an agent, okay, that's interesting and good, but now if I'm going to a self-service sort of approach to the world, improving employee experience as we go, then maybe, I think Gartner maybe has coined this term called level 0. So level 0 is that self-service support, okay? And so how are we going to measure this stuff? Well, there's a couple of things that you need to think about. So one is if you have a portal, a knowledge base, right, is you can actually use Google Analytics. So interesting enough, once again, there's a little bit of crossover here between my world in marketing, right, and your world in day-to-day IT. Because Google Analytics allows us to look at engagement. It allows us to look at how many people came to a particular page, how many people, how long did they stay on that page? What was their entry point, their exit point on in your portal? What page, what was their flow? What's the typical scenario in terms of where they're flowing from what page to what other page? Again, and then ultimately, we can start looking at unsuccessful and successful. One way we can look at successful is if they actually submit an incident, or if they view a knowledge-based article and say, hey, it's solved my problem. We could do that via post-survey. We could do that a lot of ways. We could start measuring in combination of Google Analytics plus some other means. We can measure these things in a new way that's going to lead us to better employee experience. And another cool thing I would ask you to check out is a technology/service called Happy Signals. So Happy Signals is a company that is sort of a startup. They are a partner of ours. They're a partner of other companies like Cherwell. But I encourage you to sort of check it out because they actually measure some kind of happiness quotient around how IT is doing with their interactions with employees, right? And again, go check it out and see what they can do for you. All right, cool. So, last tip. And this is, I'm going to make this one pretty quick. In fact, it's really a bonus tip because really I had 3 main tips. So we'll just we'll call this a bonus because you've been such a great audience. Your participation has been fantastic. All right, so bonus tip. All right, bonus tip is think beyond IT service management. What do I mean? What do I mean? Well, again, what is our theme? Our theme is improving employee experience, okay? We can improve employee experience through IT service management, no question, okay? Because again, what do we say? We said a lot of a day has to do with technology. Therefore, technology problems or new technology or new applications or getting access to the right applications all has to do with sort of helping serve our employees through IT service management. But there's an emerging concept, and I'd say emerging, it's been around for a few years now, but it's enterprise service management. And it's basically applying some of the same thinking, concepts, approaches, and tools, best practices, if you will, that are tried and true from an IT service management perspective to other areas of the business. And I really think some of our leading, as I think about our customers, I can't use, I don't think I should use their name, but there's a global manufacturer of electronics that is super innovative. They're not only innovative in their products and a leader known, again, globally, but in their approach to service management. They've created a separate group. They dotted line into IT, but they call it their shared services group, right? So it's basically saying, hey, we want to create a portal for our employees to come. We're going to make it super simple for them to fulfill requests, right? And there's kind of 2 main flows on any kind of a request flow. If you think about it, there's the problem side, which in the IT service management world we call an incident. So something has gone wrong and I need it fixed. And then on the other side, I need something new to kind of do my job. And those 2 are really important. And how quickly and easily can you make it? So, again, if you think about this beyond IT service management, it's not just, hey, my computer's broken or I need a new computer. It's my chair's broken, I need a new chair. I need a whiteboard in my office. My office, or if you want to move over to your badge, I have an employee badge. Well, it's not working, or I need a new one. I've got a new employee coming in, or there's a problem with an employee. In a particular case, they want to raise a case with HR, right? So all of these things, there's some very, very similar service management characteristics, and there's a ton of value to be had as you think beyond IT service management and ESM, which is going to improve employee experience even further. So with that, I thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully this was useful and you learned something.